guys, there was a lot of discussion last night in the Bitcoin Design Guide Jam session about how best to deal with receiving on-chain funds to a Lightning First Bitcoin wallet. By Lightning First, I mean a wallet where all the funds are stored in payment channels. There's no funds stored in a separate on-chain component in the wallet, but you can receive via on-chain, but the funds are instantly moved into a payment channel in one form or the other. I just wanted to make this quick video to kind of go over the UX, start with that, and then kind of walk through the different technical ways you kind of can achieve that UX and give some recommendations as to what I kind of think is the best way to do this. Alright, so this is the kind of UX flow. So the user generates an on-chain request. Any funds that are sent to that on-chain address are instantly moved into a payment channel, which can be done in various ways, which we're going to get into later in the video. The next thing is the channel should have some inbound liquidity, particularly if it's a new channel being opened, which does require an LSP, which we'll kind of get into in a bit. That's a Lightning service provider, so it's like a third party that connects people to Lightning Network by opening channels for them and automating all the channel management process. This is also required as you won't be able to receive Lightning payments if you don't have any inbound liquidity. So you want to have, if you're funding with on-chain, that's obviously going to fund the outbound side, and you want an LSP to have your inbound side well funded so the users can receive Lightning payments straight away and not have failed payments and stuff like that. And you also want users to be able to instantly spend this single balance that they have, which you do by offering zero confirmation channels, which most mobile Lightning First wallets offer these days. And last but not least, you want to have the lowest trust and fees possible for this UX flow. And just to quickly explain this, the visuals, so generate the request, funds go to the request, the user gets a balance instantly, and that's all they see. They don't see all the stuff that happens behind the scenes, like the channel opening and so forth. Okay, cool. So we're going to get into the different ways you can do this. The first one, which is probably the worst UX, which I wouldn't recommend unless you're building a mobile Lightning wallet that's more catered towards experienced users, is a manual option. So user creates an on-chain address, share the on-chain address to be paid, sender sends on-chain payment to the on-chain address, and this automatically, once the confirmation is confirmed or the on-chain transaction is confirmed, this automatically opens a channel for the user. Blix does this. It's not ideal because it doesn't offer inbound liquidity, like I mentioned here, so it doesn't really use an LSP, though it could, but then you're kind of switching to a different kind of architecture. And you generally have to wait for the channels to open. You also have to wait for the channel payment to confirm on-chain, and then wait for the channel confirmation to confirm as well. So you're looking at a minimum of 20 or so minutes before you can use your funds, which isn't the best. But you could use zero confirmation channel, but like I mentioned, with the inbound liquidity, that's kind of changing the architecture, and I'll get into that in the next options. The second option, and probably the most common at the moment, and it's kind of what we've been leaning towards in the design guide, is using a Lightning Wallet server. How they differ from a Lightning service provider is just they don't offer connectivity to the Lightning Network. They just offer the more supplementary services like things like swaps and notifications to users' wallets for various things. There's a page in the Bitcoin Design Guide that kind of goes into detail on Lightning Wallet servers and Lightning service providers if you want to have a look in a bit more depth. So how this kind of process works is the user creates a swap address that's controlled by the Lightning Wallet server, which isn't ideal for various reasons, which I'll get into. The user shares this swap address to be paid. The sender sends an on-chain payment to the swap address, and the received Bitcoin to that swap address is automatically converted into Lightning, either an existing channel the user has or a new channel. Ideally, you'd use zero confirmation as well, so you can instantly spend that balance. So yeah, this is using standard submarine swaps, but obviously that requires some trust. So the issues there, as users own the on-chain address, if like the Lightning Wallet server disappears or acts malicious in some way, sharing this could be an issue. Like think for example, if you shared that on-chain address and then that Lightning Wallet server disappeared, and then I don't know, 6 months down the line, someone went to pay that on-chain address, and that Lightning Wallet server doesn't exist anymore, or a situation something like that, those funds could potentially be burned. So it is ideal to have the user to have control of the on-chain address for very marginal situations like that. Second issue is the Lightning Wallet server could not conduct the swap, which kind of erodes Bitcoin's kind of whole value proposition of censorship resistance. So that is a bit of an issue. There could be, they could have some kind of chain surveillance instilled that says that the incoming on-chain UTXOs can't be swapped, so essentially stop you from using your wallet. And in a lot of cases as well, lastly, the swaps require additional fees. Some require larger on-chain footprints as well. Some swap providers, which there's many, charge additional fees for offering the service. So it's a bit of a downside to that. And the third option, which should be free, is a collaborative funded option, which we haven't really explored in the guide at all, but I think this is probably the best way to do it. It's probably a bit too early to kind of recommend this, as obviously collaborative funds are only on Core Lightning and they're not widely spread and they're still experimental. But I think UX wise, this is the best kind of way to do it. So I'll walk through how it would work. So the user creates an on-chain address that they control, unlike a Lightning Wallet service. User shares the on-chain address to be paid. Sender sends the on-chain payment to the on-chain address, and the received Bitcoin is automatically initiated into a collaborative funded channel with an LSP. And why that's good is there's a working group at the moment that's working on creating a standardized API for LSPs. So that LSP could be any LSP. It doesn't have to be a particular one. Whereas with a Lightning Wallet server, usually those are tied to a particular wallet client, so they're not as interoperable. They may be in the future, but for the foreseeable future, most likely not. So that's okay when you're using LSP in that context. And yeah, the LSP provides inbound liquidity and obviously participates in the collaborative funded channel. And this should also be zero confirmation, so the users can instantly spend, like mentioned above. The issues with this is the user will probably end up with slightly more channels than using the above, but I don't really see that as a major problem because you're probably saving on the fees you would be spending on the swap service and stuff anyways, so it probably balances out regarding that, if you're considering that. But if you do have more channels, like you're obviously then going to definitely need multipath or atomic path payments for that smooth UX to be able to spend from multiple channels. But that's also an issue with Lightning Wallet service. People generally probably aren't going to have one channel. It'd be ideal if they did, but people are probably going to have multiple channels because it's hard to kind of dictate how people fund their channels and stuff like that. And another thing as well is I'm not a developer myself, so don't know the protocol details of this, but I don't know how the trust trade-offs would work around offering a zero confirmation channel with a collaborative fund. I presume there'd be some nuances there that I haven't exactly factored into this consideration. So the main benefits of the Lightning Wallet server, which is the main kind of way people are doing this at the moment, is it's more sensitive resistance. You don't need the Lightning Wallet server. Like I said before, you do need LSP, but that doesn't really erode the sensitive resistance because you can use any LSP you want. It's cheaper to open a new channel because no swap service fee generally required. Sometimes the swaps also have larger on-chain footprints, so they can cost a bit more regarding that. The user controls the on-chain address. Also, the fee to open the channel can be split between the two parties, so it can also be cheaper in that context. The user also controls the address, which is, like I mentioned before, about the errors about potentially sharing that address that's controlled by the Lightning Wallet server. It introduces less room for error. If there is a problem, like then the user's just going to have funds. Like if a problem with the collaborative fund opening, the user's just going to have funds in like an on-chain balance on their wallet, and it won't be as much of an issue. It'll be pretty easy to deal with. The fees can be a little bit more transparent than when you're dealing with like this kind of setup. With swaps, like the fees are generally paid after the fact. And what I mean by that is you send an address to someone, and the sender kind of dictates how much the dictates that the fee is going to be paid. The user who shares the payment request might not be aware of that. You can also obviously get around that with having good UX copy, but once the sender sends that payment, that swap's going to happen, and that fee is going to be charged. And once that request is sent out, the cost that is incurred by the swap is kind of out of the requester's hands. So that's kind of what I mean by after the fact. The user could also cancel like the dual funded channel open If it's zero conf, they could maybe have the option somewhere in the UI to cancel it if the fee's too high or they don't receive enough to open the channel. Like there's ways around that, and then they'll just have a balance on their on-chain wallet, and it'll just be like a standard kind of on-chain balance. And yeah, there's obviously some privacy benefits as well with dual funded channels. So they can essentially be like a pay join, so it can be help you against chain analysis, stuff like that. And like I mentioned before, you can use any Lightning service provider you want. So you can obviously use ones that you trust with your privacy, because they're obviously going to know a bit of information about UTXOs. So there's that also to consider. And then obviously once you have like Taproot channels as well, that's going to be beneficial. But that's beneficial for all these kind of channel opening scenarios, privacy wise. But yeah, it would be really cool if projects like LDK and stuff maybe looked into like collaborative channels, so you can achieve this UX that I outlined above without requiring trust in a third party. I think it would be a better kind of path to take. And one last thing to consider is when you're talking about a Lightning and an on-chain wallet, this is just a random thought I had when I was going through this, is say if you have two accounts, like a wallet, and you have like a Lightning or a payments account and on-chain, or you call this a savings account, you could fund either of these with the methods that I outlined above. So you could fund the payments account with on-chain payment, and that would be using like a dual funded channel or a Lightning Wallet server. Likewise with an on-chain, you could fund that on-chain account with a Lightning payment using a swap out. So that's just also something to keep in mind when like thinking about this kind of stuff. But it's a little bit out of the scope of what I'm kind of talking about. Obviously, was focusing on Lightning first, where all the funds are in Lightning, but it's just something to consider with the Lightning kind of on-chain wallets, which will probably become more of a thing in the future. But who knows? But yeah, let me know what you guys think, and yeah.